Hi there. My name is Dave Seaweed. I'm the Indigenous Coordinator at Douglas College. I'm Kwakiutl, born and raised in East Vancouver. I would like to acknowledge that I'm sharing with you today on the Kakite First Nation, the newest Minster Band, and thank Chief Rhonda Larrabee for supporting our work here. As is my understanding, the WORD Vancouver Festival is spread throughout the Lower Mainland, and so would also like to acknowledge Musqueam, Tsleil-Waututh, Squamish, Coquitlam nations. We acknowledge that we are on the unceded traditional territories of the Coast Salish people, where we live, we learn, we play, and we do our work.
Hi, I'm Bonnie Nish, Executive Director of WORD Vancouver. I'd like to welcome you to this year's festival. We are so excited by the programming. We hope you enjoy yourself. I also want to thank our whole team, our board, all our sponsors and partners, and all of the supporters. Enjoy.
Welcome, everybody. Today's panel is Poetic Perspectives on Addiction and Recovery. I'm your host, Fiona Tinwei. Before I introduce our four fabulous poets, I want to tell everybody that you can show your appreciation by typing into the chat. Remember, you can purchase your books through Iron Dog Books and support the festival through the Adore an Author campaign and silent auction. I'd like to acknowledge that I'm coming to you from the unceded homeland of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh peoples. And I'd also like to thank our generous donors on behalf of WORD Vancouver, including the Canada Council for the Arts, the Canada Book Fund, the Canada Heritage Fund, Canada Periodical Fund, the BC Arts Council, BC Gaming, Creative BC, the City of Vancouver, Downtown Vancouver Business Improvement Association, the Joseph Wask Family Foundation, the Chris Spence Foundation, the Harbour Foundation, the Asian Canadian Writers Workshop, and Quill BC. That's a lot of donors who are supporting this wonderful festival. For a full list of the partners, please visit the website. Without you, this free festival could not happen. And if you haven't already, please consider making a donation via the link in the chat. As a very special initiative, WORD Vancouver is offering a giveaway of books. All you have to do is email wordvancouverinfo@gmail.com with all the words for most of the events starting from September 16th onward to the end of the festival. The person who has the most right will be our winner. The word for our panel today is recovery. The secret word is recovery. I'll remind you of that word at the end of the session. If you're looking for copies of the books featured at WORD Vancouver, you can look at the Iron Dog Books website. So today we have four poets who will discuss and illustrate how poetry can depict and communicate the experience of addiction and recovery. And we'll have two perspectives of a poet who has struggled with addiction as well as a poet who has been an intimate and long-term observer. And we have four terrific poets here. We've got Ash Winters, author of Run Riot, Cassandra Blanchard, author of Fresh Pack of Smokes, Sachiko Murakami, whose recent book is Render, and we have Tara Borin, who's authored the book The Pit. And I'll introduce each of the poets in turn so that you can hear from them individually and know who they are. So our first poet who will be reading from their work is Ash Winters. Ash Winters is an emerging Toronto-based writer. Genderqueer and sober, their work navigates complex and colorful emotional landscapes. They graduated with their BA in English from Lakehead University in 2010. Their poetry and prose have recently appeared in Existere, Open Minds Quarterly, The White Wall Review, Free Fall Magazine, and Into the Void Magazine. Their first collection of poetry, Run Riot, 90 Poems in 90 Days, came out in winter 2021 with Caitlin Press. Welcome, Ash.
Hi, thanks, Fiona, for that welcome. I'm going to be reading from Run Riot to you today. I wrote Run Riot while I was in a residential treatment program, so it is it's a day-by-day memoir of my time there, starting with the first day that I arrived at treatment, and it ends when I graduate 3 months in. I'm going to start us off at day 6. Day 6. There was a stretched out piece of myself, I couldn't quite reach the part that would give control. Often felt like it was right there, like for sure I could reach it if I leaned over. I needed it, and my hands fell through the open air, fingers extended, expectant, out into the moment before I hit the roof, bottle, floor. Day 24. Go fetch me an altar to a god I haven't met yet. I want to laugh at something sacred or destroy something important, a thing drenched in meaning that I don't for a second take seriously. Too much around here I am supposed to be gentle with, cupped hands and held breath, for fear I might break something of someone's that is the only unbroken thing left. This next poem I'm going to read is part of a portrait poem series, and these are kind of little micro portraits of the other folks that I was in treatment with. This one's from day 30. Haley. Next door, on the other side of the thin wall, is a young girl with a younger baby. She gets out today into the chaos world of family, friends, strangers, users, and all the places she knows where to find them. No help in the fight to get her kid back. She could do the almost impossible with the rest of this. She could also get distracted. I will probably never know, but I will wonder and hope. And the last poem I'll read from this set is day 38. Used to days that feel like they sparkle and pop. Gunshots. Off I go, onto the same, left behind to the fuzzy haze. Here, the feeling of my scarf on my skin, the damp taste of winter air in my mouth, the sound of a friend laughing. Wednesday, I fell to the floor, crying. I blew my nose in a t-shirt I found there. Saturday is just a day I realize I am fighting for my life, and I want to live. Wash the shirt. Think I will wear it on Wednesday.
Thank you so much for sharing those poems, Ash. What's cool about your book, of course, is 90 poems in 90 days, one poem per day. So there's this progression and a journey that readers go on with you in the book. Were they actually written within 90 days, one after the other?
Yeah. What I did is I woke up each morning and I wrote around 3 poems, actually. So then when I went to edit Run Riot, I boiled them down and kind of put them into their positions. So yeah, they're for each day as they go along. So they tell a bit of a story of my evolution in treatment. Yeah.
That's great. Well, I'm looking forward to hearing more when we do our second set. Terrific. Thank you, Ash.
Thanks.
So our next poet is going to be Cassandra Blanchard. Cass Blanchard was born in Whitehorse, Yukon, and is part of the Selkirk First Nation. Fresh Pack of Smokes is her first book and won the 2020 Relit Award. Congratulations, Cass. She lives in Duncan on Vancouver Island. Welcome, Cassandra.
Hi. I will be reading 3 poems from my book, Fresh Pack of Smokes. This poem is called Stars, and it's about my father. Instead of calling the ambulance, they dumped his body on someone's lawn. My father had overdosed on heroin, and his so-called friends were too afraid of the police to try and save his life. And so the cops came to our house, and because we were children, they gave teddy bears to us. However, I was asleep when the officers came, so I woke up to my sister crying, and she said he passed away. And I thought he fell in a ditch, passing away like falling. And so I went to my mother, who was in the shower crying, and she told me he was dead, and I understood. My memories are there, but there are not so many of them. And some of them I would rather not remember, like the alcohol he was dependent on, and the violence that came with it. He was troubled, but he loved us. I look up at the sky, and to me he is a lone star in the ever-darkening cosmos. This poem is about domestic violence. I was in a violent relationship during my addiction, and it's also about a friend. It's called Domestic. I was afraid he would hit my friend the wrong way and kill her, because he'd already stabbed her with a metal push stick and broke her glasses. One time, after arguing with him, he snuck up behind us and pushed her against the wall. While she protested him to leave her alone, 2 construction men were watching, and I was afraid to step in and get hurt, but he forcibly kissed her and left. After that, we sat on the bench and smoked rock. I listened to her talk about her boyfriend and how she loved him, and I thought to myself how I ignored those first signs of violence, like the moment Kayla threw a CD at me, which made us go silent with shock, and then how laughter followed. As time went by, her anger progressed, but there were loving moments after the violence, as she apologized for hurting me, and it's these moments that made me stay. But I was also afraid that she would go too far, and that I would die at the hands of someone I loved. This poem is about the downtown east side, and it's about the Asians who live in Chinatown. This poem is called Witness. The DTES is full of Asians working and living their lives. I also think they're an audience to the tragic comedy of Skid Row's drunks and addicts. Hastings is like a fishbowl unaware of the outside, like a world unto itself. The residents of Chinatown watch the show while selling herbs and ducks and doing their daily. Once I started noticing it, I saw watchers everywhere, like older men walking with their hands behind their backs, looking at deals being done, or addicts huddled against buildings smoking dope. On Cordova Street, groups of Asians have their work breaks and smoke their cigarettes and watch the busy business of street traffic. They're mostly silent watchers, as I've never had an Asian resident of Chinatown or the DTS bother me or tell me to fuck off. It's just a consistent surveying. Though I mostly ignored them, sometimes I did become angry, like when this one man kept staring at me. He would walk by, blatantly eyeballing me, and when I complained to my friend, he pushed the dude to keep him going. Overall, though, I really don't mind, because with all the bullshit that goes on in the streets, it might as well be a reality show. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing those acutely observed poems with all those details. You really give a sense of place and of the exchange and interactions between folks there on the downtown east side. Thank you, Cass. We'll hear more from Cass in the second round. Our third poet is Sachiko Murakami. Sachiko Murakami is the author of 4 collections of poetry, most recently Render, published by Arsenal Pulp Press in 2020. As a literary worker, she has edited poetry, taught creative writing, worked for trade organizations, hosted reading series, sat in juries, and judged prizes. She lives in Toronto. Thanks for tuning in and coming in from Toronto, Sachiko.
Hi, thank you so much, Fiona, for having me, and thank you to my fellow poets. Wow, some amazing work tonight already. I'm going to read a few poems from Render, my latest book. Render is a book of poems about my experiences in 10 years in recovery, and a bit about my addiction and trauma, and kind of usually filtered through my dreams, but the poems I'm going to read are not exactly filtered through my dreams. These aren't dream poems, but many of the poems in the book are. So I'm going to read to you some poems that, these ones I guess kind of use some of the language of recovery, and this is called The Exact Nature of My Wrongs. Evidential hip won't swing through the full arc of the present moment. Fulcrum stuck in time, when the locomotive urge towards the future meets the bound and gagged girl. Stop here now, take a photo for the archives, gather the weight of her grief and take her to your bed, then friend her on Facebook and leave her to her walk of shame. Picture this, Princess Street, 4 a.m., A girl limps and considers joining a yoga class and then pukes again. Keeps walking towards the future with its endless possible outcomes. They keep telling her, will they keep telling her, will the present open as a hip in asana, or will it seize as it did when the dark closed around her that first night, and every night as she woke again in the same sick truth of her immutable body? Or will she stay in the track of a sigh and rehash her story, what it was like, what happened, and what it's like today? And I think I'll just read one more right now. This is called Two Truths and a Lie, which is the premise is that icebreaker that you probably had to do at the first day of school or at a corporate thing, where you tell 3 things about yourself and two of them are true and one of them is a lie. And so ostensibly there are 3 statements in every stanza and 2 of them are true and one's a lie. 2 truths and a lie. I loved him more than I loved poetry. I loved cocaine more than I loved poetry. When I told him I loved him, I meant I love you more than I love cocaine. When I was with him, I forgot about cocaine. This was the crux of my love. I thought of using cocaine when he asked me to leave. I thought of leaving while I was using. I used and lied about it. I lied about lying. All cocaine users are liars. I threatened to use after he left. I used after he left. He found me after I had used after he left. He was cool about it. Cocaine is its own poetry, if by poetry you mean a skillfully crafted web of lies. I transcribed my lies as poetry. Every word of this is a lie. Thank you.
Wow. Powerful, powerful work. I remember playing that game and it felt very edgy, even if what people would reveal as you went on with the game round after round. And what a brilliant idea to turn those lies into poetry explicitly like that. Great structure.
Thank you.
So part of your poems are in this book are about dreams. Is that correct? Would you say
correct.
So dreams are woven throughout?
Yeah, some of them start in a dream and then they end up in the real world or the waking world. It's just a lot of it is about trauma. So a lot of those memories aren't accessible to me because of the way the brain works like during traumatic events. So I kind of went picking through my dreams to kind of reconstruct or work with those kind of feelings and images that happen in the dream. Yeah.
And yes, very evocative poems. Looking forward to hearing your next set. Thanks, Sachiko. So our 4th poet is Tara Borin. Tara Borin is a queer, non-binary settler living on traditional Trondequetchin territory, Dawson City, Yukon. Their debut full-length poetry collection, The Pit, was published with Nightwood Editions in spring 2021. Tara's work has been published in Prism International, Prairie Fire, La Havre Review, and Red Alder Review, and the anthology Resistance, Righteous Rage in the Age of Me Too. They are a graduate of Simon Fraser University's The Writer's Studio Online. Welcome, Tara.
Thanks so much, Fiona. I'm so happy to be here.
All the way from Dawson City.
All the way from Dawson City, yeah. So today I'm going to be reading to you from my book, The Pit. This collection of poems is centered around a bar here in Dawson City that folks refer to as The Pit. I bartended there for many years and have spent a lot of time there. And also I'm going to be reading today about my experience of having people close to me struggling with addiction and my experience of that. So the first one I'm going to read to you is called Dearest. His fingers quake as he counts his change, falls short, tries to quiet them around his coffee cup. I spot him $2.50 for a pint. He drinks deep. Soon his fingers will settle. He plays crib for money he doesn't have, Used to play for Smokes in jail, so he learned to peg real quick. He wins another pint, and his face brightens like the sun over the hills in mid-January. He sings along to the radio, his tenor full of gravel, pulls me in, my off-key warble, winks at me, and I wonder who he'd be in a kinder timeline. I long to comb my fingers through his unwashed hair, salt and pepper, smooth blistecks over his chapped lips. I've never been any good at keeping the worn mahogany counter between us. Sometimes I see him, a little boy, legs dangling from the stool, kicking muddy boots against the bar. I want to take him home, feed him anything other than whiskey and beer, but for now, that's the only medicine we know. This poem is called Enough. I stand as sober as my axe in the midst of the bar's amber buzz, swing the axe, explode his beer glass and crack the old Formica table where he sits. Honky-tonk jangles silent. I don't need a man to help me eat the roast in the oven or drink the half sack of beer in the fridge or chop the goddamn firewood, but it'd be nice. At 16, I carried a moose calf out of the bush, its throat ripped out by dogs. It was bleating and bleeding, its mother nowhere. By the time I got back to the truck, my shirt was stiff with blood. He called me patron saint of lost causes, has worn me like a medal next to his skin ever since. How many times have I carried him out these years? How many more times? And the last poem I'm going to read in this set was my attempt at a villanelle. I wrote this while I was in the writer's studio. It's called The Addict's Wife. It's always cold on his side of the bed. A tired refrain haunts my sleep. This time, I'm sure he's dead. In dreams, I'm already widowed, see him wrapped in a sheet on his cold acre of bed, last words a debt, his beloved body rotting meat. This time, I know he's dead. Awake and left on red for hours, my eyes bleed. It's always cold on his side of the bed. From the beginning, he said he kept his secrets buried deep. This time, I'm sure he's dead. Heartstrings worn to threads he was never meant to keep. It's cold on his side of the bed, and this time, I'm sure he's dead. Thank you.
Wonderful, wonderful.
Thank
poems,
you,
Tara. I mean, these are not easy poems to write. And with the villanelle, I think the structure really works because of that refrain in our heads when things are going on. Is that repetition, an obsessive thought, and it rings true, but it has its own musicality, adds a musicality to the lines. So a very successful villanelle. In fact, next time I teach the form, I'll bring yours up.
Thank you.
Yes, this brings me to, if everyone could come onto screen for a moment before we do our second set, a quick question for all of you about how you put together your collections in terms of structure. Did you, I mentioned about Ash having, 90 poems in 90 days, and even though some days obviously you wrote more poems and maybe other days you wrote possibly a bit less, you structured that around that. But Cassandra, how did you arrange the poems? Are they chronological, or how did you organize things?
Well, when I was writing the book, I never did any outline. I never planned any of the poems at all. I just sat down and it just came out, just coming out one by one, wow. Over and over and over again. So there wasn't really, when it was more like a stream of consciousness. So when I was typing the poem, it was just going on and on. So I decided what I would do is just make the whole poem just one sentence. So I would write the whole poem without any commas or periods, and then I would play with them after, and I'd be like, okay, I think I should put a comma here, because, you know, when you're reading out loud, you take a breath, right? So I was thinking, okay, I can like that, take a breath, keep going on, and then stop. So it's just like one poem would be like this whole stream of consciousness. That's what I was, that's more of like the structure and how it came to be.
Yes, because when I was looking at your book, I thought it had this like prose poems, right? Throughout. Yeah, and very nicely organized that way. And how about you, Sachiko?
I guess it's chronological, because it is kind of, I guess it's like playing with the idea of memoir. So it kind of has like an origin story, like origins, and then it has poems about things that happened when I was in addiction, and then things that happened in recovery, and things that happened kind of in late recovery. Yeah, so I guess it's divided into kind of chronological sections. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And also, of course, the journey of recovery and addiction isn't necessarily linear too, right?
Yeah, I mean, that's like the end of the book is like pretty, like a lot of stuff happens when you just keep living, right? So like a lot of bad stuff happens too, and it's like not great. So yeah. Mm-hmm.
I know, because, you know, some people want that kind of traditional movie structure where there's that upward arc and it's the crisis, and suddenly, hallelujah, everything's wonderful and everyone's happy at the end, and they can come away feeling that everything's in the world has been solved. But of course, in reality, we know there's forwards and backwards and so forth. But it's an incredible journey to go through. And how about you, Tara?
So my book is split up into 5 sections. There's beer parlor, rooms for rent, the regulars, the hard stuff, and last call. And yeah, my poems kind of fell pretty naturally into those sections when it came time to order the book, and just take you through different aspects of the bar and of my experience. So most of the poems I was reading today were from the section, the hard stuff. And I really wanted to put those poems all together in that section because they are, you know, the most vulnerable for me and the most difficult, were the most difficult to write and are to read. And I wanted readers to have a heads up that was coming. And so that's why I wanted to gather those there. Yeah, and then like the regulars is that section is a series of poem portraits of some of the regulars. Some of them are like sort of aspects of several different people rolled into one character. And yeah, and then Rooms for Rent deals more with the rooms upstairs above the bar. So that's how I structured mine.
Yeah, it's cool that there's, you know, these portraits, whether they're portraits of ourselves, you know, looking as if from a distance, or portraits of other individuals around us. Ash, did you have more comments about how you shaped your book?
Not so much the shaping, because it really is chronological, but if I could mention about the portraits, I think it's really interesting because I feel like addiction creates these like moments of really intense personality, for lack of a better word, but these really intense like portrait type moments where it's like if we could take a picture with words of that person in that moment, it would be really stunning. So I think it's interesting that you find portraits in your book as well as mine. But
yeah, I love that connection.
Really cool.
Okay, well, why don't we, on that note, go into our second set of readings. Ash, would you like to start again?
I would love to. Thanks, Fiona. I'm going to start back up with day 10, a little bit of talk about trauma stuff. Day 10. The addict craves the absence of the craving state, Gabor Mate. Satisfy. A, meet the expectations of desire, comply with. B, be accepted by, as adequate, be equal to. I accepted. Bottom of the bottle, adequate, equal to whatever else was outside my door. I don't want to crave so much. It was most of what I did. A fondness for the look of beer cans, the silhouette of wine bottles. Mind clears right before the first swallow. Mouth waters at the sound of freshly opened, wanting. There is no instance left behind by trauma that can meet the expectations of desire. The gap between what you want and what happened is too big. And scattered throughout Run Riot, there's kind of poems that dig back into my like family history or personal history, and they're very scattered, but I like their scattered nature because I feel like memories that are hard to deal with often feel scattered. Day 84. Breathe out the complicated confusion that is everyone's best guess. Forget the gas can in my mother's hand. That place would have gone up like it had never heard the word insurance. I wouldn't blame her, but I was there. Someone else would think outrage, but they couldn't outrage us. They would say it wasn't her house, but they would say it wasn't my house. More than 100 years old. What do they know about years in that place? What do they know about what it costs to rebuild? How did they not notice that her hands trembled, that she cried, that she didn't do it, that he wouldn't have even noticed if the neighbors hadn't stayed nosy all these years? And I'm going to leave off with another portrait poem because I just like them so much. Day 89. Charlie. When she said she was standing on that bridge, I should have said how glad I was she didn't jump. I did say that she was looking good. She did say that she was feeling better now, feeling strong. Can't we just carry each other around to make sure that we are safe? I want to know that she is safe. Little pieces of my heart wandering around this city drunk and high. I wish it was enough to stop them from hurting themselves. I wish it was enough to stop me from hurting myself. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ash. There's so much intimacy and intensity in the poems this evening. And I feel like all of you are so courageous in sharing your work. I'll have some more questions for you after we hear the others, but thank you for those poems. So we have Cassandra again. Cass.
Hi. Okay, so I'll be reading two poems. This poem is about the alleys of the downtown east side, about using outside, and it's also about cocaine psychosis. Okay, it's called Perfume. Walk down, turn right, and follow the odor of shit and piss behind Carnegie, where low-level dealers and rats roughly the size of small cats scurry by the overflowing garbage dumpsters. Some roaming addicts rip-roaring high and stuck in the hole in the wall, scared of the blue cruisers and their rubber glove searches. Walk through the scary, empty corridors of the Astoria Hotel, a place where bad things happen, but nobody ever seems to be around, with dry bloodstains on old mattresses infested with bedbugs. Beside it, the small liquor store, where 24/7 alcoholics lurk while sipping Listerine. Crack pipes burn lips so toxic that spiders appear out of nowhere and crawl all over skin and floors, and pieces of Brillo get stuck in lungs. Some twirl around in the alley demanding free cigarettes from passerby. Some are on hands and knees picking at wax, or sometimes it's like snipers are in the buildings with trained guns and black helmets. Smell the street, how it's an entity unto itself, like cold concrete vessels with dirty puddles and scary people who will fuck you over and fuck you up. That block-long street market with hustlers and dealers and scrapers, and that smell that permeates the air. Down here, nothing is fair. It's a circus with old ghosts walking the alleys as those predators tread lightly and silently behind the innocent. This poem is part of a series in the book called Love 1, 2, 3, and 5, or 6, and it's poems that deal with love or desire for another person or a thing like drugs. This is the first one. I thought it was love, but really it was exploitation. It took me years to comprehend how much Kayla had damaged me and my soul and my sanity, and especially my trust of other people. Relationships that are based on drugs are never healthy. It's like a black peach. It looks good on the outside, but once you bite it, it's all rotten on the inside. I went from being a partner to a cash cow to feed our drug habits, and our desperation and rootlessness haunted us until there was no respect anymore. Like a lone shoestring, the only thing that held us together was sex, whether it was us making love or for men who paid me a lot of money for services. I remember the first time I ever turned a trick. I was 19, and when a dealer asked for a blowjob, I said that I didn't do that kind of stuff. And of course, behind my back, he asked Kayla if I would do it for a substantial amount of crack. She didn't ask me, she told me, and therefore I did it. And that started an influx of dates. Once these exchanges began to be normal for us, the respect she had for me vanished, and I was no longer a person but a means to get more money and drugs. Violence came with it, and it came slowly until she was headbutting me on the street, or pulling my hair, or scaring me with a hunting knife. And I had to deal with her psychosis, which was unbearable. I am sure Kayla is cold inside, but she did make me feel warm, and I loved her, though I had every reason not to. And I wonder now if she's dead or alive, and if she is alive, what her life is like. And then I get angry because why should I care? Thank you.
So vivid. Very, very powerful work. Thanks so much, Cassandra. Oh, this is an amazing reading. Sachiko, you're next.
Hi. Okay. Wow. Hard to come after that, Cassandra. Wow. Holy moly. I'm going to read also a poem about something unpleasant and bad that happened to me during in addiction, and it's called Acknowledgements. The edge blurred, face dissolving, lorazepam memory, oil gathered on surface, a filmic voice saying I had wanted this for a long gray sky, never reflected a storm, behind shadowed curtains, talk to two different sponsors about the nature of consent in a blackout. Gulf of throat between then and now, turns ankle as a boot sinks into water, filled space between he and a white rail, and he stifles reflection of I'm too fucked up to drive home, or I need to sleep. In Dream City, built between he and who holds a broken woman below her, circling the city with your conduct, not the conduct of others, listed in the thank yous under all the people I may have forgotten. Or if he was in a blackout between my legs, a dream of the friends preserved in the photograph of what happened before. You'll never know if you gave the dark voice a dream. My writing was better than this. Body listening to my body's story, not worth preserving in a dream. I put the girl to bed and watch until he leaves. Whoever lived here still lives here. And I think I'll just finish with a poem called Coda. And there's a quote in it from Gertrude Stein that starts with a sentence and ends with a prison. So those are Gertrude Stein's words, not mine. And this quote I often think about when I think about why I'm a poet and not a prose writer. And it also makes me think about the kind of vagueness of trauma memory. Coda. What does trauma do? It insists. What does it insist? A sentence of a vagueness that is violence, is authority and a mission, stumbling, and also certainly also a prison. Relieve me of the bondage of your sentence, that I may better form a will. Grant me the serenity to accept the difference between now and then. Then the seas of fear shuts down the machine of language, the hurdle towards the end of the sentence left hanging here in the exact nature of my wrongs. That's it.
Gorgeous and terrifying at the same time. Wow. This is a very special book.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you for writing it.
Thank you.
Looking forward to talking to Sachiko some more about her book and Cassandra's and Ashes. But first, we must hear from Tara again. Tara.
Thanks so much. Yeah, just such powerful readings. Yeah. So I've got a few more poems here to read for you. This first one I'm going to read is called Pit Kid. No, sorry, I'm going to read Telephone first. So this poem kind of is me grappling with working as a bartender and at the same time experiencing addiction very close in my life. So Telephone. I am the one serving him beer after beer, trying not to think about who is left at home. It's none of my business. I'm not here to judge. I take the rent money, the diaper fund, and break the change down for tips. When the phone rings, the voice in my ear is stretched thin by sleepless nights and distance. I pass the phone over, busy myself cutting limes. Acid stings the cracked skin between my fingers. The proud bull's head watches from the wall as someone buys another round. I am the one cupping the receiver of a payphone in a truck stop parking lot because we're too rural for a phone. Baby wails in the car seat as the first snow blurs the windshield, cools my flushed cheeks. I whisper down the line, is he there? Poke's been hit by a truck. Please come home. Barroom foams through the receiver, your voice drowning in theirs. Hang up the phone, settle the baby, drag the dog off the road, myself, and bury the body beneath the birch trees you love so much. Okay, now I'm going to read Pit Kid. Pit Kid. As a baby, they played with pool balls at the staff parties, were given shot glasses of water and passed around for photos. Up for days, Dad likes to slur on about his perfect child to anyone who will listen. Drunks call the house at night looking for a loan, and Pit Kid learns their mom's furious whisper in the dark. When they're 10, they play Super Mario with their friends in the tobaccoed office upstairs. They're sent down on occasion for supplies, stand in the doorway to the tavern while their dad fills an empty beer box with cans of pop and small bags of Lay's potato chips. Their mom, her makeup done, their friends' parents crowd around a table with pitchers of beer, sing Wagon Wheel as someone abuses an acoustic guitar. By the time they're 12, they switch to soft ciders, start stealing smokes from packs left unattended. Mom talks about taking them to stay at her sister's place in Ontario. Dad sleeps on the chintz sofa whenever he comes home. He gets sober, takes them fishing for grayling, gets drunk, falls down the stairs. They learn that nothing lasts. He wants them to take over someday, believes it to be a gift, but they know better. They dream of lighting a match and not even staying to watch it burn. I'm going to read one more quick poem to close it out. At the cop shop, getting fingerprinted for a new job, my 4-year-old in tow. The handsome young constable, all angle-jawed, blue-eyed, brassy blonde highlights in his cropped dark hair, leads us into the depths of the station, to a windowless cinder-block room where we stand shoulder to shoulder, the ink pad on a table in front of us, my kid crowding the edge to watch. Let me do the work, he commands, so I let my hand go limp in his. Tendons pop along its back. A soft haze of hair creeps from the cuff of his shirt. He starts with my thumb, presses and rolls it firmly, first in ink, then on paper. Repeat for each finger of each hand. When he reaches my ring finger, I am briefly grateful that the fish belly mark left by my wedding band has finally faded away. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thanks so much, Tara.
Thank you.
So let's bring back all the 4 poets we've heard today so we can have a bit more of a discussion. Now, writing about addiction and recovery necessarily seems to require writing about painful, terrifying, very difficult experiences. And I wanted to ask you, poets, about being vulnerable that way, about sharing your work. How did you manage the vulnerability there in sharing these difficult experiences and emotions? Ash, do you want to talk about how you managed to deal with those?
That's a good question, Fiona. I think that when I started writing Run Riot, I was discovering vulnerability in a lot of ways. I had finally, after like a decade of drinking, discovered that I could ask for help. And I was lucky enough that there was lots of help in my life, really privileged that way. So I'd kind of just discovered the like magic of opening up to people, and I just kind of kept going with it with the poetry. And I think it is scary a little bit sometimes, definitely like opening up, especially about memories or things that you've done or have been done to you that are hard to talk about. But I think like the other poets in this panel are so inspiring because, and I've been so inspired by other people in recovery who are being just as brave or braver. And I find that inspiration guides me that if they can do it, then I can do it too.
Did you deal with any sense of self-censorship, of withholding and being afraid to put it on the page?
Yeah, but I think there was an equal voice that was afraid of not getting it out there, of not really getting at the whole truth. And that was more important to me than worrying about being seen at that moment in time.
Thank you, Ash. And how about you, Cass?
Oh, well, it took me like a really long time, like many years, for me to become like objective about what happened. Especially, the scary experiences. And when I was writing the poems, I felt like it was like a total therapy for me to get them out, because I felt like I was just burying my soul. And I didn't think about other people when I was writing them. I was only thinking about myself. And then it was only later during the publishing phase where I was like, oh my God, people are going to know everything now. But yeah, it was just for me, it was just becoming objective. It took me about over 10 years to really be able to look at what happened, and I wanted to make a record of what happened, and not only what happened to me, but people around me, the other addicts that I met, what their lives were like, and also the outdoors, the streets, the buildings, and the outreach workers, and the men who go down there, and yeah, so.
The poems you read were so vivid. Mm-hmm. Your whole book is very, very vivid and very powerful that way. You really evoke the downtown east side very, very effectively. But very courageous for you to describe it as honestly and brutally as you do. I mean, there's obviously not all brutal. There's other tendernesses and friendships and so forth as well there. It's also very nuanced. How about you, Sachiko?
Well, I always say that like everybody knew what a mess I was. So like it wasn't a secret like that I was a huge mess. So like, why would I want to pretend like I wasn't? Like that's part of recovery, is like acknowledging that like it was bad. Right. And I think that like when I connect with people that have had similar experiences through my writing or through talking to other people in recovery, or people that have experienced trauma, that those are the people that it's like the value of connecting with somebody in that way outweighs any like risk to myself. And I've done so much healing that those things aren't like, they're not as immediately devastating as they were like when I first got sober, right? Like I can talk about them now without it like being totally destroying. And to be able to do that and to connect with people that have had similar experiences, I mean, that outweighs any like fear of me looking bad, you know? So yeah.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Wonderful to, yeah, you don't look bad. You look courageous and honest and authentic. Yes. Tara.
Yeah, I mean, I think like the most vulnerable poems in my collection were the last ones that I wrote. And I was consciously putting those ones off. But for me, a big part of it was acknowledging what happened. My experience of having an intimate partner struggling with addiction was a lot of denial. It was years of denial on my part and also enabling. And it took a long time for me to even realize what was going on. And Sachiko, in your poem about, you know, lies on top of lies, like I really, that was my experience, just such a web of lies that I didn't even know what was going on. And so writing those poems for me was a way for me to acknowledge what I went through and acknowledge how hard it was for me. And I wanted to include them in the book, in spite of how personal they are and how difficult they are. Because, you know, like the other poets have said, I wanted other people maybe going through that to read them and recognize their experience and know that they're not alone and that things can change and maybe get better. And so I mean, I would just really echo a lot of what everyone else has said about the importance of that possible connection outweighing the danger of feeling exposed, you know. Yeah.
Well, you've been getting a range of wonderful comments from the audience this evening that are really appreciating. I mean, you've written from the heart and they're responding the heart. And I'm so glad that we could get all four of you here today to share these poems. Anything that you want to ask each other at all?
Oh, I thought everybody was amazing. Just amazing. Yeah. I was just thinking, Tara, because you know probably met a lot of my relatives, and I was just thinking, you know, how many of my own relatives do you see when you were bartending? Because you know, a lot of people up there, they drink a lot, right? So and that was in my head.
Yeah, and that's one of the things with the pit and what I was getting at with the collection, because it's, I mean, the bar is like a community, and struggling with addiction or poverty or, you know, trauma, these folks are still just there for each other, you know, in big ways, like whether it's a, you know, like a fundraiser because someone's house burnt down, or you need a ride home, or you need groceries. The pit is a place where you can just go and someone's going to help you. And there's just this big piece of like meeting people where they're at there, which is, I guess, also something I was trying to capture in the book, because I mean, addiction is a really hard thing to get out of. And but I mean, it's a beautiful community as well, and it's beautiful the way that folks are there for each other, and there's some of that in the book as well. So I've also worked with, you know, like the people there, just we know each other in so many different capacities, being a small town. So the
other thing I wanted to ask you all is about that you touch upon sexual assault, sexual violence. And you've written about that. Did you have any comments about writing about that in your books, including poems about that in your book? Sachiko?
It's a really common experience for women and femmes in addiction to experience that. I don't know any woman in recovery that hadn't experienced that. And it's not, it's not like I was really ashamed of the things that happened to me because they happened when I was using for a long time. And because the responsibility of things gets really muddied, like when you're using and in recovery, because of the language around responsibility for yourself. So a lot of these, the poems that I wrote about sexual assault were about that, like thinking through that, like who's like the responsibility piece, because in certain recovery programs, like you're responsible for yourself, and there's a lot of that, and it doesn't really account for sexual assault.
No.
So that's like I was thinking about that a lot at the time, and writing poems, and then that's just what came up for me, like in late recovery, after kind of looking back at things that happened like 10 years ago. So yeah.
Yeah, also like in the downtown east side, sexual assault happens, every day, all the time. And working in the sex trade, I worked in the sex trade for many years, and like unfortunately it's something that happens. And just like what Sachiko, what you said about it,
Yeah, it's the reality. Yeah, people taking advantage of the vulnerable. Yeah. But on another note, you have these beautiful, beautiful books. If you could hold them up again so that people can see them and recognize them when they see them on the bookshelves. I want to recommend all these books to everyone in the audience. Please purchase a copy of any or all of these terrific books you've heard from today. You can visit the official bookseller, Iron Dog Books. The website will be in a link in the chat. Ash Winters, author of Run Riot. Cassandra Blanchard, author of Fresh Pack of Smokes. Sachiko Murakami, author of Render and other beautiful books of poetry. And Tara Borin, author of The Pit. Thank you all so much for your powerful, beautiful, courageous, amazing books. I'm so glad we could gather today. And, rather than just have one person and one focus, to have a sharing like this, to see some of the common themes and how you've dealt with those common themes in different and interesting ways. It's been a wonderful, wonderful event. I've really enjoyed it. It's been a privilege and an honor to be hosting you today. Thanks so much. Thank you also to the staff and volunteers at WORD Vancouver for making this possible. There are plenty more events happening. Please check out the complete listing at wordvancouver.ca. Thank you to an amazing audience for listening so attentively and with your terrific comments. Remember that the secret word for this WORD Vancouver event is recovery. So if you want to win some books at the book giveaway, recovery is the word. So thanks again to all the readers, to all the listeners, to WORD, and to the donors behind WORD. It's been a wonderful festival, and I hope you all have a good evening. Thanks again.
Bye.